Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to Word First Radio, the podcast brought to you by Word First Ministries. I am your host, Jacob O'Neill, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Cameron.
What's up?
How you doing, man?
Doing good.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we've had a very eventful August, so why don't we go ahead and just jump right into some of the stuff Word First has been able to do.
Yeah, it's been busy, and busy is good. You know, I like to say, I won't blame this on you. I like to say busy is better than bored.
Sure.
And it's actually cool. After a time where like that feels like there's transition, or maybe we're not doing the right things, or we've been here for some amount of time now. It's like, are we doing the right stuff? Are we doing enough stuff? And now to sort of feel like the boulder is starting to tumble down the hill. You know what I mean? Or at least like we're pushing it up to the top or something like that.
Yeah.
But to feel like we're making progress and doing things. So, so this month had a lot of stuff. I think maybe we'll take it in order. I think the first thing really that happened was when you were in the worship team for that youth camp.
Yes, absolutely. So right after, like right in the beginning of August, there's this really large youth camp that meets somewhere in the south, more towards western side of Norway. It's a city called Vegelskei. I was invited to be a part of the youth band last year, and I was asked to do it again this year. I was very, very excited and happy to do that. That was tons of fun. I played electric guitar in the band. It's really great. For me, it serves two purposes, right? For me, I get a chance to play electric guitar finally, and it's like Norwegian boot camp for me.
Yeah.
Because while most of the teenagers speak very good English, that's not what you want to be doing when you're at camp with all your friends. You want to speak only Norwegian.
Well, you have the opportunity to sort of be immersed in the language.
And, more than I usually am, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before, how it's hard to learn Norwegian in Oslo, particularly because it's very enabling that everybody speaks English. It's a very international city. A lot of people like to speak English. Vegelskei is not, to say the least. Yeah. You're in the middle of the woods with a bunch of Norwegian students who grew up in Norway, and most of what they speak is Norwegian. So it's like, you know when the first time you jump into the deep end, like the 8 feet deep end of the pool, that's what Vegelskei is as far as language learning goes. So last year, being there made me jump very high in my language learning progress, being immersed in a language only for a week. This year, not as much high of a jump, but it was so good to practice that. It was awesome. We got to see people be baptized at Vegelskei, which was awesome. I got to connect with a lot more students. A lot of students recognized me and wanted to say hi, and that was a lot of fun. Just a really great time to minister. Something that's really exciting about that, though, is that our church that we're currently a member of brought for the first time a group of kids from our church to Vegelskei Youth Camp. That was pretty awesome.
If you had to estimate, how many churches do you think are represented? How you say it's a big thing? Like who's invited to this thing?
So everyone from Kristiansand to Lillehammer to Fredrikstad, lots of different churches around the east side of Norway and the south. How many churches are a part of it? I don't know, maybe 10, something like. There was something like over 200 students.
Wow.
It was the largest turnout they had ever had.
Wow.
It was so large, however, that they didn't really have a place for me to sleep. This is not at all. I don't say this with any bitterness at all. It actually turned into a lot of funny stories. But I had to sleep kind of what they called the prayer room. We kind of turned it into a little bedroom for me. But very, very many people had to sleep outside on tents because there were so many students there. It was definitely the biggest year they've ever had. So maybe like 10, 15 churches, something like that, bring a bunch of students. Some bring like around like 6 or 7, like our church. Some people more in towards Fredrikstad or in the south are a little larger, or in Skien as well, especially. So they bring maybe like 20, 30. But in any case, I mean, it's a place where lots of students go. And based on the messages I've heard, I mean, people heard the gospel every day.
Good.
People got to, meet Jesus. People got baptized. It was a really great week.
Yeah,
and
excellent.
I was super happy to do it again.
And that's one of the things I've noticed. So of course, I'm blessed that the team that came over the team that came to Norway is just filled with skills. And so it's really, I don't know if rewarding is the word, but I am like a proud mama goose. I'm like a proud mama goose getting to see the team in general and Jacob in specific, like his talents and skills being recognized. And so he being invited to all kinds of stuff. So Jacob's leading worship at places all over Norway. Mm-hmm. And it's a really great thing for me to get to see. So that was Vegelskei. I think maybe I'll talk now about, I met with Benta. So Benta is one of the pastors in our church. And she's the one, when we got here, who kind of laid it out and said, listen, if you guys want to plant a church, then join our church, which is called Home Church. Join Home Church. And that's something we'd be eager and excited to help you to do. And so that was nearly 2 years ago when that happened. And in the meanwhile, we've kind of been, I would say, feeling each other out. That's not even what's been happening. Like, it's like none of us have done this before. So it's been some like discovery and understanding what that's like.
Yeah.
And so we're getting to a place where it felt a little bit like we haven't talked really about when's it going to be time? What does it look like? What does our continued relationship look like? Are we doing the right things? Are we doing the wrong things? So Bent and I, God love her, she came all the way, I say all the way out here. It's a half hour or so from her
bus.
Yeah, by bus. It's like a 10-minute drive.
Yeah, right.
But she came all the way out to me, and over some coffee, we just talked about like, what does forward look like? And step one was I committed to her that the Word First team was going to spend the summer codifying, writing down, getting clear on and writing down, like, what is our mission out here? What does it look like? Our mission and our vision. And we've talked in abstract principles before. What is it that we like overall are here to do? What does that kind of look like? A few sort of specific, we're doing missional community. What does that mean? Well, here's what it looks like kind of vaguely. So it's been kind of vague. And I said, we're going to solidify that as best as possible so that at the end of the summer, we can meet again and give you sort of our whole understanding of what it is that we want to do, like what we think God sent us out here to do, what we think we're prepared to do, what does all of that look like, so that we can then start working on planting. And it may be, we had the understanding. I said, maybe at the end of this, you say, well, listen, you guys aren't even close. You're not going to really get to do that for 10 years, but here's what the next 10 years look like. But like, whatever it is, like, hey, where are we at? Where are we going? And then understanding together, like, what lay in between those two points. And so we did that. We had that meeting, which I think we'll talk about not quite yet because that happened the most recently. But in the meanwhile, one of the things that happened was we as a team took I don't know what to call it, a working retreat, something like that.
I've been calling it a spiritual retreat been feeling really terrible about saying it that way.
I don't know if that's what it is exactly, but Lisa in our church has this beautiful house on the farm where she grew up.
Yeah.
That just is stunning, and it's in the middle of the country, and there's like nothing around,
right?
And it's on the lake. It's just, gosh, I don't know how anyone could leave that place. In fact, I talked to Lisa about it. She's like, well, until she met her husband, she's like, I was never going to leave. And I met my husband, and I was like, okay, I'll come to Oslo.
Yeah.
And so we as a team took a trip out there, and we stayed there for 5 days and really just worked on all of that stuff. Okay, let's get clear on like, what is not only our mission, but what's our missiology?
Right.
And we're doing missional community. What does community look like? And what are we asking people to sign up for? What are we asking Christians and non-Christians and our church and our denomination? Like, what is it that, like, how can we explain it to you get what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
Like, so what is it that we're doing? So we had a really great retreat, I think. We'll call it a retreat. It wasn't a conference, but it was just all of us. We just got a house together for a week, and it was great because we have regular meetings where we talk about these kinds of things and sort of like, okay, what does forward look like as far as planting a church is concerned? But we get each other for like a couple of hours and go, great, think about that. I'll see you again in a week. We got to get together for a whole week. We'd go, okay, great, let's have some lunch, and then we'll keep talking about that. Or we could talk way into the night after the girls go to sleep. Or we could get up early, make breakfast together, like enjoy each other's company, and then get into important stuff. So we had that meeting, and then a meeting, retreat, whatever, and then put together, I say put on paper, but sort of put together our values and our mission. What was your experience of that? What does that look like from your perspective?
No, I thought it was really good. And it became more apparent to me as the week went on that this was something that we needed. It was never something, this is the first time I've ever said that to Cam. So I'm not saying we didn't need it or that I thought we didn't need it before, but after, being in that environment, just kind of away from all of the other things we normally do on a day-to-day basis. Because one of the things, if I want to be like really cynical and play devil's advocate for a second, if I want to be really cynical and I hear you saying this stuff, it's like, well, didn't you guys already know that stuff before you came to Norway? Or didn't the people at your church already know that before you joined them? And the answer is yes and no.
Yeah, kind of.
The answer is yes and no. The thing is, over the last 2 years, you gain perspective, and you're doing a lot of different things. You're trying to get integrated into culture and ministry out here. You learn a lot of different things. You learn about what works and what doesn't. You have to pivot and adjust your plans as you see fit. And then another thing is that you don't really have a lot of time to really sit down and just set your principles like in stone almost. And what I really loved about this week was that we all were given tasks. We were all given different areas of our missional life out here and what we want our church to accomplish and what we want to accomplish as Christians in Oslo. And we got to talk about the principles behind those things and why we do the thing that we do. Cam was very gracious and let me talk about something that's very passionate in my heart. I got to talk about our evangelistic principles. Motown got to talk about our mission and vision principles, and Alan got to talk about what does our missional community actually look like.
Like, what do we actually do?
Exactly, practically. And that was awesome. We got to actually lay that stuff out, get it all out in the air, and codify it, like Cameron said, so that we can be as clear as possible to people out here who may want to come along with us, who may want to send us and plant. And it was really good. It was good to kind of take a week-long break from ministry in Oslo and to just hyper-focus on what Word First wants to do. Yeah. And it was really good.
And also just have some time together. Have some time together around the breakfast and lunch and dinner table.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
Yeah, around the farm, which was beautiful, and play games and just whatever.
Hang out with the girls who are insane. I love them in the most loving way possible. Yeah. But yeah.
So we did that. That was really good. What else happened after that? There's so much that happened in August.
Yeah, well, something happened at the beginning of August.
Yeah, you guys have been here for 2 years.
Yeah.
Whitney and I get to celebrate that in a couple of weeks, but the rest of the team got here 2 years ago. What do you think about that?
Oh gosh, what don't I think about it? It was, it's been an absolute trip, to be honest. I mean, there's so much to look back on and reflect on, and one of the things is that these last 2 years have taught me, and really me and Motown. I'm not going to try and speak for Alan too much, but me and Motown's really taught us what it means to rely on God, especially when you don't have a lot or most of the things that you had, in the States when you left. It's been a lot, and I talk to my parents about it a lot. I mean, and they always want to know, like, are you guys fine? Like, are you going hungry? Like, are you okay? And we've never gone hungry. We've never been without. Mm-hmm. But that's the craziest thing in the world. If you look at, to put it frankly, my bank account,
right.
If you look at that and the fact that, like, we've never gone without, we've always ever had everything we've needed, and we've had to rely on God. And by the way, this is still the easiest way to experience and learn this lesson, because I think about other people who have gone through not even close, like to even make this comparison at all is hilarious, but who have gone through way worse situations where they've had to learn how to rely on God and His provision and His care, way worse situations than us, and they were able to learn this lesson.
Yeah.
I hope that me and Marissa can learn this lesson now, as we're going through this. So through the last 2 years, I mean, we've been so thankful and gracious for the people who have given money for us to be here. It's been tight. There's been lots of struggles that have been tight. Me and Marissa live very, very modestly, especially compared to where we came from. Mm-hmm. But God has been so good. He's been so good, and He's been so faithful. And in the midst of all the struggles, we've been taught how to rely on Him. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we've been kind of saying from day one is we need to keep looking at our altars. The altars is kind of a shortcut we use at Word First to kind of call us back to the things that God has done, the miracles that He's done to keep us here and to keep us thriving here and to keep us healthy here. And we have to keep looking at those altars, like Israel had to build altars in the wilderness.
Right, otherwise they'd forget.
And otherwise we'll forget. Mm-hmm. We have to keep looking at those altars, and it's been amazing. So what do I think about the last 2 years? The only thing I can really think about is God's faithfulness to us when it's been hard to be faithful. Yeah. And when we've wanted to be faithless, He's taken care of us in so many different ways. It's hard to list the number.
Yeah.
And I feel fulfilled. I feel excited for the opportunities I've had to do out here and that we've had to do as a team. You talk about me doing worship all over the place. I consider that a huge blessing because that's not something I asked for, and that's not something I expected. But it's been such a blessing. I've gotten to meet so many awesome people who get to hear about, what we want to do in Oslo, and they've been encouraging and they've been wise. They've been able to speak into my life, and we've gotten to be connected to them, and it's awesome. So the last 2 years have been a trip. It's been challenging far beyond I could have expected, but in the midst of that, God has just shown me how faithful he is.
Yeah.
And that's been the most amazing thing to see.
Yeah, I think that's good. He has,
and that was the short version of that, by the way.
Well, good. I won't add much to that except to say just yes and amen. God has shown himself faithful in sort of whatever we go through. And we've been through some rough stuff. We've been through some tremendous victories and exciting things, and we've seen some really low lows. And I know it sounds cliche, but in the midst of all of that, like God just turns even the bad things into good things.
Right.
And it's not, this is one way to learn the lesson, right? Not that everything, when you become a Christian, everything is good. Or when you follow God's call for your life, everything is good. Or when you cross cultures, like there's so much stuff that is a lot harder than we thought it was going to be. And it's hard to explain. We come to Norway. We've talked about this a lot. Come to Norway, and culturally, it's very similar to the United States, especially compared to missionary friends we have who've gone to like places that where culturally they're very, very different. Compared to the United States, Norway is close. They live close to each other on that continuum, but it's different enough that it's hard to express just the burden or the shock or like what it does to you when everything you do here is different. And that little bit of anxiety you get when you go through the cash register, go to the cashier, you go through the cash register, knowing they're going to start the conversation in Norwegian. And it's gotten better. We know how to have that conversation now. But you still have that like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to speak Norwegian. He's going to ask me if I'm a member, and what are the ways they ask me about if I need a receipt, and like there's all that stuff that happens. There's that moment of anxiety when you have to call about your SIM card or get a doctor's appointment or call about your rent or to get your oven fixed or whatever. Like the robot voice is going to be going 100 miles an hour in Norwegian, and you're gonna have to deal with that, and then you're gonna get a real person on the phone who's gonna come at you in Norwegian. So even just that. Nothing happens in the language that you're familiar with or that your heart speaks. Like that every interaction you have, you're going to have to start with trying to understand a foreign language, and then maybe sheepishly asking, "Can we switch to your second language? Because I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough at that one. I chose to be here.
Right. Exactly.
I chose to be here, and I can't talk to you." And there's that sort of shame and embarrassment that goes with that. So. But in the midst of all of that, God has just shown himself incredibly faithful, which shouldn't surprise us. And I don't know if it surprises me or if it's just a source of comfort, but it's like, oh yeah. Right. You said you said that you were going to be faithful even if we're faithless. So, I think all that to just agree with you to say that we underestimated some of the difficulties.
Oh yeah.
We've lived through some difficult seasons, even though it's only been a few seasons. Some of them have been rough and dark and cold. Both like actually and slightly metaphorically. And God's he's been faithful and good and turned those good things into bad things. Used bad things to cause good consequences that we don't deserve anyway. So,
there's need to look it up because I don't want to quote it wrong, but the verse that I posted on the, because I wrote the post, on the 2-year announcement thing, I want to just kind of read it. I was talking to my dad about it actually, and he was telling me about the things that dads do, when they're trying to encourage their sons, especially sons they didn't expect to be missionaries, but sons they are super proud of, and I've been very thankful. My dad's been very encouraging about that. And the reason I posted this verse is because particularly for me in my spiritual life, it's been kind of a refuge for me. And so, Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, there's no one who's left house or brothers or sisters or mothers or fathers, or children or lands for my sake or for the gospel, who will not receive 100-fold now in this time and in the age to come eternal life."
Yeah.
That's been like a huge refuge for me, to be honest. When things get difficult for me, for my parents, and for my wife and for her parents. And when things are struggling behind, we just realize, and we have to take to heart, that heaven is our home. Mm-hmm. This place is not our home. We're striving forwards toward the end. And one day we'll get to look back on all these difficult times and one day we'll see the full picture of what God was doing the whole time. Mm-hmm. And that this verse has become a refuge for me. It's become a refuge for my wife. It's become one for my mother too, who is like, I hate the fact that you're God. I miss you so much, but I love you. Keep doing what you're doing. And you're right. One day in all of eternity, we're never going to think about this missed time that we've had.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So it's been a huge comfort to me. It's been a huge refuge to me. And I hope those of you who are pursuing the gospel, pursuing what God wants you to do wherever you're at, I hope you realize that doing these things for the sake of the gospel, going out and spending your life teaching other people about Jesus, you will never, ever regret that. Your reward from him is 100-fold in this life and the next.
Yeah. Ultimately, you won't regret it. You might find reasons to regret now, but ultimately, we've talked about that a lot, about how it kind of, compared to eternity, it rounds down to zero. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And what else happened in August and the first few days of September?
In the first few days of September? That's right. Cameron.
What else do we need to talk about? Which I'm not setting you up for. I'm just making sure we don't miss anything.
Yeah, for sure. You went to camp too. Is that right?
Yeah. I promise I wasn't setting you up for that. Like, hey, ask me about camp.
But I figured you weren't, but then I was like, that was the thing I remembered, and I don't know how much time we have left. So,
but I did go to camp. So I was invited by the Nordic Chinese Christian Church, which is, I want to say it's an association of churches. I don't think it's a denomination. That is headquartered in Helsinki in Finland. And they have a congregation here in Oslo, and they're fantastic. And I've had the opportunity to preach there several times, and every time it's just an absolute blessing. I really do have a lot of tender affection for this church. And so had the opportunity they asked me if I would be their guest speaker for their weekend camp. So we had, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 at the camp, something like that. And maybe over or underestimating, but if I am, it's only by a few.
Yeah. I'm super stoked you got to do that.
Yeah, it was
I'm
awesome.
So happy for you.
It was really
That's
great.
Amazing.
I was just couldn't, and they're just so good to us. Like they paid the way for my family to be there and made sure that we had a room that had beds for all of us. Mm-hmm. And so Whitney and the girls got to come, and they gave me sort of more freedom than I wanted. They're just like, what do you want to talk about? We like the things that you preach about. We think so what do you think? Yeah. And so got to collaborate with them about teaching. I did two 2-hour sessions on Saturday, then 2 1-hour sessions on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's just a tremendous blessing. And we had people there. It was interesting. So the guy who is in charge of it is Charles. What up, Charles? I don't even know if he knows that we have a podcast. But if he does,
he will now. Yes.
He's been shouted out. And so all these people have Chinese background. So some of them immigrated. Actually, I don't think all of them are Chinese. Like we met a young lady from Malaysia. But the majority of them, like, they're like first generation immigrants. So their parents immigrated from China or Hong Kong, and they're the first ones here. So Charles is an American from Boston, who that's also true of. So he's has Chinese ancestry, or not even ancestry, like his folks.
Sure.
I don't know, what do we call our folks? Our ancestors.
Yeah.
And he sort of took responsibility for the camp and invited me to come and speak. And like our first night there, it was this sea of beautiful Chinese faces and me. And he's like, I just love seeing such an international crowd here. And I was like, what? And he's like, and I love that. And it was so stupid of me to be surprised. He's like, we've got people here from Norway and from Sweden and from Finland and Denmark. And then last of all, he's like, and then me and Cam from America. I was like, that's right. Just because people look similarly doesn't mean that they have the same like background or history. Mm-hmm. So what a great reminder of that. Like I wouldn't have thought of it as an international crowd, but then I thought about that. I was like, if you get a bunch of like Germans and Swedes and French guys and Russians in a room, and and it wouldn't be like, I wouldn't think that's not international. I go, what an international crowd. We have people from all over. Anyways, sorry, that was beside the point. But I had the opportunity to sort of be the guest speaker, which is weird for me. I don't know why. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Is
know
that
why.
the first time for some kind of camp like that?
Yeah.
That you've been, okay, I got you.
Yeah, first time we've gotten to speak at a camp like that. So it was good. We spent several hours together. So we did a couple of hours on like God's attributes and his goodness, which was really good.
Yeah.
And then we spent some time together just like looking through the Proverbs. What are some principles for life? Like how can I leave today and live differently and learn to live wisely? And then we did some time, I took a page out of Sean McDonald's book. Sean McDowell, not McDonald. Oh my gosh, Sean, I'm so sorry. He's not listening to this, but Sean, if you hear this, I'm sorry. Sean McDowell's book, which was pretended to be an atheist and gave a 10-minute presentation on why I'm an atheist, and then took questions. And then once I felt dirty enough, I was like, okay, I'm not really an atheist. Let's do Q&A as a Christian apologist. And so we did that, and that was really great.
Did one of the Christians hold their hands up and say, "We'll take the blasphemy challenge if you're really an atheist"?
No, gosh.
No, yeah.
Praise God. No, they didn't.
That's not what the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is. But anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was really great. And it's always a pleasure. I love them so much. And like I said, they worked it out. Like I said, asked, would it be possible for my family to come? They said, we don't know. We have to figure out how to get them paid for. And then they just paid their way, and then made a place for them in all of their programs and everything they were doing, and honored me and my family certainly beyond what we deserve. But it was amazing. And so those things those are some of the opportunities we've taken to be parts of other congregations. But then in the context of what we're doing here, Whitney and I had that meeting that we talked about that we were preparing for. So we met with Benta, said we're going to get prepared for what does our church plant look like let's codify that. And then we had that meeting a couple of days ago. And I think that went really, really well. So it was me and Whitney and I. It was Whitney and me. That's right. It was Whitney and me and Benta from our church, and Zach and Jen. And Zach and Jen are in the leadership team of our church, and they do lead in the denomination, and they're also our organizational superior. Zach hates when I call him my boss. He's been on the podcast before. Check out Zach Dove.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love him.
And they're here in Oslo with us also, but they're also in charge of us they're our team leaders with IMB. And we got to just kind of lay out what do we think our church plan, all that stuff that we've worked on. Yeah. And I think that went really, really well. That's my perspective. We got to get clear on a few things. I mean, we've kind of felt, especially these last several months, a little bit off balance, slightly uneasy.
Shaken,
or it's should we be moving forward with a church plant, or are we ready? What does our church leadership think of us? Just kind of not should we move forward? And do they think that we're moving forward? Because there's been some of that. What do they think we're up to? And are we up to the right things? And are we doing what God wants us to do? So anyways, we got to sort of just talk about all of that. And we spent several hours together. They were here for almost 4 hours. And we got to just lay it all out, which was great. And so we don't have to share, I don't think, our vision and stuff necessarily. Maybe we'll have a podcast where we do that, although I don't know how important. If you guys want that, send us an email. Give us a call. Leave us a comment or whatever platform you're hearing this on.
Let us know, Larry. Yeah.
Let us know, Larry. I'll have you for coffee. We don't need to make a podcast for that. But we got to present that to church leadership and denominational leadership, and talk about what does our partnership look like and what does planting look like, because we're doing something that's pretty different than what most folks are doing here. Now, for sure, there are people who are doing missional community or something near enough to it that we have some expertise to draw on, which is wonderful. But it was really good. And we got some excellent questions. We got received some challenging questions that I'm really grateful for. Yeah. Because if there are no challenging questions, then that's never good, right? When nobody has any questions.
Yeah. Well, and also on account of our fallibility and lack of omniscience, there's definitely room for critical feedback. Right. I mean, the thing we've been saying since day one is we are not Norwegians, and we never will be. And so we need to listen to people who have been here, who have grown up here, and who have been here longer than us, because they have expertise and wisdom we need to glean from. So.
And that was, Benta's first bit of feedback. They let me sort of shoot my whole shot. Yeah. And then Benta was like, okay, as a Norwegian, here are some of my concerns.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
perfect.
That's just I need that. Yeah. We need that. And the church needs that. And so I think that went really well. And we left sort of at the end of it, just understanding each other better, and with church leadership going, okay, you guys should get started. So what that looks like is, let's start transitioning you out of your areas of ministry at church and out of our house churches. So house church is what Home Church calls it, small group communities. And so how do we transition ourselves well out of all of those so that we have time to start cultivating our missional community that eventually is going to be our church plant?
Right.
And we have I say permission. Permission isn't the word, but blessing and understanding that that's what's going on. When I was talking to them, I said, it seems sometimes like you guys take for granted that that we're moving forward with the church planting stuff. And I said, we're not. As far as I'm concerned, we're sort of standing at the gate, waiting for your blessing to open it and get to work.
Right.
And I know that that's a silly, that's a super silly metaphor, but I think it was good because we can use that. And I said, use that now and moving forward. And Bent was like, yeah, open the gate, move forward. Let's talk about what that looks like. Let's talk about how, like, what are the natural rhythms in Norwegian, in the Norwegian calendar? There are better times and worse times to start new things. How do we meet people that we think that we want to have community with, but that we're not like poaching important people from other churches? Because of course, this is our first one. We want mature, reliable Christians to plant with us, but mature, reliable Christians, they're going to be an important part of the ministry and church family that they're a part of. So
yeah, they usually are.
Yeah, so it was good. So we got to talk through a bunch of that stuff and just kind of go, all right, let's start strategizing, which I'm really eager to do. So we as a team get to start strategizing and talking about what do we think it's going to take to get from here to there.
Yeah.
And then do that in concert and cooperation with church and ultimately denomination leadership. So what does it look like to be a Baptist Union church, which is important to us because then we're a part of something that exists, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I mean, well, and that just speaks to just who we are. What we've had in our minds and hearts from day one is a very cooperative spirit. So it's something it's something I just mentioned ago, right? You know, we're not trying to kick the doors down and just kind of go off on our own or start off our own thing without any support or being known to the people here who've done ministry for a while. The Christians here have been doing ministry in a very dark city spiritually in a very dark country, and we need to respect that, and we need to respect that not just by acknowledging that, but by working with them and gleaning from that. And so,
and I think it's just naive. We knew this before we left. We talked about it. So if any of you were at our dinners that we had where we talked about the vision and needs of the ministry, you heard us say this, like, we're not the American saviors, we're not the American supermen who are flying in, who are flying in to save the day.
Yeah.
And what a naive view that would be, that all that Norway, you know what the Norwegian Christians need is they need some Americans who know how to do it the American way.
Yeah.
And that just becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And so often I'm just like, man, the Christian community here is so rich and so deep, and it's been around for so long. Like, we'll hear hymns being sung, and I'm like, how cute. They have that hymn in Norwegian. And I'm like, oh, they had it in Norwegian before we had it in English.
Right. Well, it's funny. It's funny you say it like that, because it's one thing to say, hey, we're not the American saviors from a place of, thank God, wisdom at the time before we came here. It's another thing to say that from experience and just realize
understand
it's like,
why.
Yeah. Well, it's like, oh, of course, that's what you're supposed to say. You're not the American saviors. And it's like, no, after being here, we know now even more clearly that is way not the case at all.
Right.
We are not the American saviors, and if we tried to be, we'd fail.
Right.
That is so true. And now we know it experientially. So, yeah.
So that's been really great. So we got to have that long conversation, and there's some challenges and stuff to do. And there's still a lot we have to learn. You talked about that a little bit earlier, Jacob, where it's like, we've been here for 2 years. And there's stuff we have to learn. So some of it is like, we spoke about before we left for Norway, talked about the vision and our mission. And so much of it was still floppy because we didn't know. We knew overall, we knew in vague and abstract ways, but it's like, we didn't know so much of what we didn't know, and now we've learned a bit about what we don't know, which is actually, like, to know what you're ignorant of is a step in the right direction.
Sure.
And then to have an idea about how to fill those ignorances with experience and truth and knowledge, I think is really great. And so we're getting there. We understand a little bit more about what we don't know and how to fill that up, and we know a bunch more stuff now too. So the mission and vision hasn't changed, really. It's just come better into focus. It's like a developing Polaroid, right?
Sure.
It was just blurry and gray, and now it's coming more and more into focus, and we're able to see more clearly the stuff that's in the frame. And as that happens more and more, that's great. And there's still a bunch. Like, what's great about the model that we're pursuing is individual churches have a lot of autonomy and freedom to understand their mission in their community with their lives and their gifts and their context.
There was much discussion about that on the West Coast during our retreat.
Yeah.
Cam, we got to wrap it up for today.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, we found lots of things to talk about.
I feel like there's a bunch of stuff we missed too, so maybe we'll.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But there's another thing. There's a podcast we have. We can just do it on there.
Yeah.
But very cool, man. Thank you so much for meeting with me today to
course.
talk about these things. You who are listening at home, thank you for tuning in to listen, and we'll see you again next time. Please keep following us on social media, and as our plans for our church plant come better into focus and as things start to happening, we will not hesitate to keep you guys updated.
Yeah.
We'll see you again next time. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Word First Radio. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check us out online at wordfirst.us.